We'll have to see where. I'd be surprised because everybody has brought control lineups today, so Dan would be out of place, I guess, if he brought an aggro lineup to this particular matchup. But leaving the rogue open is interesting because if this is a sort of a control list for Dan and that's a quest rogue for Duncan, then you're going to have that edge that if you just you give quest rogue a free early turns, they're gonna roll over. But the Paladin, obviously, we can see they could do some serious work in the early turns, and it is going to be the Paladin here for Dan.
Miracle Rogue for Duncan.
Wow,
however. Okay. Something that people tried, I think, during the when Unguro first came out, and they didn't really know. I could hear you rustling some like.
I'm trying to get my generic chocolate bar out, and I thought it was far enough away from the microphone.
I was trying to make some sort of discussion, but it threw me. The Miracle Rogue was tried and tested, and no one really found anything. And Sherazin the Corpse Flower was another card.
This is really hard to get out of the packet.
It was another card that was overlooked, I think, by a lot of people, but its insane value has really shone bright in this Miracle Rogue list.
Yeah, I find the Miracle Rogue list really interesting. Stop laughing at me, Dan. I find this an interesting list because I think it performs better in a tournament setting, generally, than it has performed. You're now trying to get yours out of the packet, but you're a little bit more practiced than I am, Dan. I can tell you've done this before. Are you enjoying your chocolate, Dan? Would you like to tell the stream how much you're enjoying the chocolate?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think it's a better tournament list than it is a ladder list. It actually got Questing Adventurer in there as well. That's something that I haven't seen too much of in the Miracle Rogue. Haven't seen a huge amount of Questing Adventurer come through, but
I've seen a couple of it recently.
Yeah.
It's certainly something that it wasn't there about a week ago, and then someone just decided, oh, wait, why not? Let's just put Questing Adventurer back in. That even happened in the previous meta. It dropped in, it dropped out, it shook all about. And I think it might find its place here for a little while. It will really depend how the meta just continues to shift week by week as we dive further into Unguro, to be honest.
Duncan now considering whether he wants to bother backstabbing this Arcanologist. I guess you could say backstab it now so that something like Getaway Kodo can't get played the following turn. Or I could just dagger up. Looks like Questing Adventurer and then backstab's going to come down. So I guess that was even more of a in-depth thought process here for Duncan. He's now going to have a 3-3 on board, and obviously the threat of it going further and further next turn as well.
That's N'Zoth.
That is N'Zoth.
So Dan taking a little bit of inspiration from the winner of DreamHack this weekend, who did win with N'Zoth Paladin in his lineup. And I like just removing Murlocs off the board. You get so much value when a Murloc is left on the board. Something like a Rockpool Hunter can do damage. So taking it away and putting an immediate threat is fantastic here. So, options for Dan. Does he just Doomsayer? Hope that it can't be removed. Does he outdoor Peacekeeper? And hope to deal with it the next turn. Hope there isn't any crazy shenanigans that boost it up too high. If there was only one card played, then he could use the True Silver Champion. He's going to be Doomsayer plus Getaway Kodo. So, the sap of that likely option here, Duncan.
I think sap's the go-to here. Keep the pressure on with that Questing Adventurer. And it just means he can continue to push damage. Now, I guess he's wondering whether that's whether he should hold on and test for no, he's not just going to go. I was thinking maybe the thought process maybe that he holds on for Noble Sacrifice because he thinks it could be Noble Sacrifice and then just uses the daggers the next turn. But True Silver bought a turn here. The sap took the entire turn, and True Silver now deals with that Questing Adventurer very nicely. And now Duncan either mimic pods, I guess, or he uses Razor Petal Lasher and actually finally gets that dagger on board as well.
And the Razor Petal Lasher is one of the reasons why the Sherazin has been so powerful, because you can just put those 1-mana spells into your hand, which will just add and allow you to play 4 cards in one turn. Of course, for Dan, that previous turn, being able to play the Doomsayer, get the Doomsayer back from the sap, and still being able to deal with the Questing Adventurer has really helped him with the tempo of this game. And now he can continue to find value. Wicker Flame always seems like a solid pick, and especially compared to what else there was. Ozark didn't really seem very very takeable, considering the lack of elementals in this deck. In any way would you play Doomsayer here? Perhaps that's a consideration coming through from Dan now.
I guess I would consider it on turn 5 of the Rogue, so your turn 6 for Dan to try and play around maybe Auctioneer and then anything into Preparation. I don't know if I'd play it here. There is that consideration, but you deal with the board. Now, what is Rogue going to play on 5 that particularly threatens you that you'd want to play? I guess Sherazan. I guess Sherazan is the potential put down that you might want to play against, but I don't see the need to Doomsayer here. Interesting that he doesn't hero power.
Yeah.
It's not like he's playing around Brawl or anything.
Maybe just slipped his mind.
Oh my god, all these Razor Petal Lashes, plenty of card draw, plenty of reduction of mana value of the Arcane Giant as well. Ah, I know why he didn't play around it, because he's got Getaway Kodo. So he wants to get his Stonehill Defender back. So there's no, he didn't want to run the risk of potentially one of those Razor Petals being slammed onto his hero power. So
I was looking at that Doomsayer thinking that was Getaway Kodo, but of course it wasn't. It was sapped back, so it didn't initiate the secret. So wise plays coming out of Dan.
Wise plays indeed, and this is now Dan probably sitting here saying, I don't really want to play anything else again because. But then this is the turn that you would potentially play Doomsayer if you wanted to play around Gadget Zan coming out next turn and any crazy sort of preparation plays. But Dan pretty happy to just force Duncan into giving him another Stonehill back into his hand. And do you bother playing around that as Duncan? Are you that bothered about just giving him another Stonehill Defender? It's pretty slow, and you're going to start to speed the pace of things up pretty soon. You know, you get Sherazan, you can start slamming Arcane Giants down pretty soon. Are you that bothered about just giving him another Stonehill back?
I don't think you are particularly bothered. I mean, you've got to at some point. If Dan is going to continuously go down this line, just waiting and waiting, just give it to him eventually. The coin off the top means that Duncan is now considering whether to play Auctioneer plus one of the Razors. Perhaps 2 week a turn. Instead, he's just going to put another Razor Petal Lasher onto the board. And if he does manage to get one of those...
this is going to be a filthy Auctioneer turn.
This is what I mean. If he finds, for example, like another counterfeit coin, then there's a lot of value for this Auctioneer.
No Death Rattle's, I think, been played yet for Dan, so let's see where he goes. Sunkeeper Tarim seems solid, but he's got the option of Ascension's Shieldmaster to give him a nice curve with the rest of the 4 mana that he's got to spend.
I like Sunkeeper Tarim because, you know, this is Miracle,
Giants,
right? Yeah. Arcane Giants is something that...
but you've got double Outdoor Peacekeeper in hand as well.
Let me think.
No, I like Sunkeeper Tarim, actually. No, I do like Sunkeeper Tarim. I prefer it.
I mean, yes, okay, you've already got the Peacekeepers, but even more answers is definitely not a bad thing.
If I was going to Doomsayer, I'd be considering Doomsayering this turn. Just because of the fact you know he's got lots of 1-mana spells in hand that he's been holding on to. Duncan now can think about going off with preparation as well. This is going to be literally everything. He might even be able to play Arcane Giant this turn as well, depending on how many spells he can get used.
It's a hallucination.
That's a great card as well.
Unfortunately, it doesn't feel great with prep.
No.
I mean,
but you've got Prep Eviscerate.
Yeah, Prep or Eviscerate. You've Prep Sap, but I'd like to keep the Sap, I think, for that potential Doomsayer that you know could come down. Playing the Razor Petals first to draw more before he plays the preparation, as he finds another prep as well, so you can prep, eviscerate, prep. Eviscerate if you wanted to.
It's only going to take it down to 1, though. I don't think it will get it down to 0, which is what I was thinking potentially.
Oh, you Mimic Pod as well.
Do you Mimic Pod this turn instead of Eviscerating?
And you can do both.
I think that might be on the edge of overdrawing if you do that.
I don't see why you wouldn't Mimic Pod here.
How many cards would you get, though? Would you not get, like, 3 cards? And how...
Yeah, maybe that's what Duncan's thinking. He's got 7 in hand, you play the prep, it draws 1, gives you 2.
Despite all of what we're talking about, all this is doing is generating a very low mana cost Arcane Giant that is just going to get Outdoor Peacekeepered.
Yeah.
So while it looks fancy, we can see that there's not really going to have a huge end here for Dan.
Well, that's the thing, that the potential for Duncan is to, play 2 massive Arcane Giants and maybe a massive Edwin as well, and maybe his Windows license will expire.
Oh dear.
And I hate it when that happens.
I hate it when my Windows license is about to expire.
It doesn't help you in Hearthstone games, really, either. The games where my Windows license has been due to expire, I usually lose.
Actually, funny story.
Okay.
It's not a funny story, but it's a story that's just... When I reinstalled my PC last August, I got a new motherboard. It's not a funny story. Don't look at me.
I'm already falling asleep.
It's not funny.
Quickly, get through it. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah, okay. Stop pressuring me down. When I reinstalled my motherboard, basically, Windows told me that I no longer had a valid version because essentially got a new motherboard. They thought I got a new PC. So now I've had this little overlay on one of my screens saying you need to reactivate your copy of Windows.
Oh dear.
That's really not a funny story. I don't actually know why I said that. It's getting lame, sorry. I'm sorry, everybody.
It's okay. We all like to tell stories now and then. They can't all be fantastic.
That was a terrible story. I just feel ashamed.
So as you said earlier, the Peacekeeper can just easily put this Arcane Giant down to just one attack.
I actually quite like Getaway Coda here, because then you can Aldor Peacekeeper, and if Aldor Peacekeeper gets dealt with, you just get another one back, which is valuable against the Edwins, it's valuable against the other Arcane Giant. I think it has so many uses here.
Repentance is huge.
Yeah, true, that's also big.
I mean, we also just touch upon the fact that Duncan picked up a Sunkeeper Tarim as well from his Hallucination.
Yeah, you don't usually get huge amounts of minions in this Miracle Rogue deck, however.
You don't? If Dan hadn't traded, he might have been able to get a little bit of value there instead. That's not going to be a Tarimable board you want to play. Prep fan available if you want to just look, search for more. Could backstab first.
I'd always be tempted to Mimic Pod to see what I get before making decisions. Because I could get something really big like an Edwin, right?
I'm trying to think where Duncan wins with this matchup. Knowing that Dan has the Peacekeeper, he has the Tarim, probably has equalities along with his Consecration and Pyromancer as well. Just a lot to deal with big threats, because this rogue typically does just put giant-ass minions on the board, and there are two of them.
That is not bad at all. Sunkeeper Tarim will definitely deal with them, but I really, really assume that Duncan is now going to say, well, I need to sort of pressure pretty soon here. Actually, will he be able to completely clear this board and then just shove Arcane Giants down? That would be pretty solid.
One of them, of course, yep, goes down to the Repentance. So that means you can just... I like that Duncan hasn't put all of his eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
He hasn't played both of them just because of the removal that can come through.
So would you just use one Consecrate outright here and just say, okay, then play Doomsayer potentially?
Yeah. I like that. Just get rid of an 8-1, simply.
Because the other option, I guess, was to Wild Pyromancer, but then you're going to Consecrate anyway, so there's no point. I think this is the best way. It's kind of the only option that Dan really had. There was not really much use to playing Sunkeeper Tarim. He's yet to play a Death Rattle, I believe, so Zoth not going to get huge value. Zarol the Poison Mine, by the way, not something that everybody has included in their Miracle Rogue list.
So he could get some value from his Sunkeeper Tarim now if he wanted to.
Yeah, deal with the Doomsayer.
He could, well, he could just sap the Doomsayer.
Do you need to, though?
Kill off the 1-1 and then play your Tarim. But where else are you going to get your...
if you're going to play Sunkeeper Tarim, hit and then you just kill the Doomsayer. You don't even need to waste the sap, because sap could be really good, useful against things like
But then you're
Tyrion.
not leaving anything on the board, right? Your 3-3 doesn't become... Your 3-3 just dies to his 3-3 in that instance. But I guess he values his sap.
Oh, you can just eviscerate it as well. It's a 3-3. I was thinking sap's pretty good against the likes of Tyrion, right? So... Oh, the Cold Blood comes through as well. Duncan playing this really cleverly, actually. Not overcommitting with another Arcane Giant here, knowing how devastating an equality could be. And actually, despite Dan having all of these answers, Duncan has managed to temper out his threats in a sequential scenario.
Yeah, he might just have to play a Sunkeeper Tarim as a counter here.
Or even just an Aldor into a Spike Ridge Steed. And then hope that he somehow draws an equality in the following turns, deal with any further threats.
Still not seen any Death Rattles.
Yeah, I'm wondering what kind... maybe it's just a very limited Death Rattle where you're just playing in Zoth to bring back something like a Tyrion and a Cairn.
I mean, I know I briefly touched on it at the start of the show with Tempo Warrior being a consideration nowadays. That I know Tice had some success with it in ladder. Danswf was used as the replacement for Varian because you can just put maybe 3 minions on board that are going to have taunt. And it has seen some success. So maybe that is the idea with Danswf Paladin here. Just a few minions with Death Rattle.
Stealth until the end of your next turn. Could be good for the Arcane Giant. Basically forces Dan to have an equality to deal with it.
If he does get an equality, then
yeah,
it would be massive. Unfortunately, like, he doesn't have the mana for something like a Tyrant into a Pyromancer and Consecrate.
Does have a sap as well, obviously, like we said, held onto that sap. I'd almost be tempted to slam the Arcane Giant and stealth it.
Do you need to?
I mean, have you got lethal next turn?
You got lethal next turn.
Yeah, you have with the Razor Petal.
Anything, even with your weapon.
Yes, you're true.
I don't even know if you need to play it here. I think it might be slightly overkill. Because the only way that Dan really gets back into this game now is with some sort of equality.
Absolutely.
But
actually, you're right. I mean, actually, I completely agree with you. The only way that Dan actually clears his borders is equality Consecrate. So now you just make it even better if he draws an equality, which he hasn't.
So Sunkeeper Tarim is the only defensive mechanism he has.
Is that going to be enough?
But then you still die, or at least you're one off from what I can count.
I think
you'd run 2 3/3s into the 3/7, plus use your weapon. Leaves 2 3/3s on board, plus 1 Razor Petal puts you at 7. But you can draw for more.
You got Fan of Knives.
You have got Fan of Knives, which actually can do 1 damage, so you've got lethal because the Fan of Knives can do the damage instead of your face.
Yeah, if you play the Spike Ridge Steed here, you're just dead. If you play the Sunkeeper Tarim, you're just dead. Actually, if you played Outlaw Peacekeeper and Spike Ridge Steed, would that save you? I think it would, potentially.
Alternatively, you could play Sunkeeper plus Consecrate. You get rid of one of these 3/2 minions, makes it a little bit harder. You'd obviously Consecrate first, just to get rid of the Zarl. Dan is going to Peacekeeper up and shove that Steed on board. Have you done the math whilst I've been talking? Does he still have lethal?
No, because you've got to get through another 2/6 taunt. Hallucination, what will that bring here? Will that bring him anything useful? Tyrion Fordring. I mean, I would happily take a Tyrion Fordring.
Tyrion is useful.
It's going to definitely provide me with an extra win condition, despite the fact I've already got fantastic win conditions here already. So you trade in the 8, and then one of your 1 health or even just your face, and then you can't get through the Spike Ridge Steed or the Steed that comes out of it, so
perhaps fan first here. See what you find. Do you need to play Tyrion this turn?
No, you don't need to play Tyrion this turn, I don't think.
Then I think you fan.
Yeah, I think you could have fanned there. Because it could have found. I don't know if I don't think he's got another Eviscerate though. I think he's used both Eviscerates.
He's used both.
He's got another Stealth. So now you can actually Tyrion Stealth, which would actually play around Equality Consecrate because you can't get rid of the Divine Shield.
Wouldn't play around Equality Pyromancer Consecrate, but that's some pretty extreme circumstances.
That is indeed.
So Duncan gonna put the questions on the board again. Forbidden Healing coming through.
Forbidden Healing
for 20. Put him up to 28. Keeps him alive.
Yeah. You could even play Sunkeeper Tarim and then Forbidden Healing.
Then you're only healing for 8, right?
Yeah, but you're also reducing damage on board by not a lot. Maybe it's better to just use Forbidden Healing.
Is it? I mean, I'm thinking about this. Sunkeeper Tarim certainly means you can deal with one of those minions. You're reducing the damage, and you're putting yourself up to 16 HP.
And then he has to get through Sunkeeper Tarim as well.
You're giving yourself more time. Well, which way are you giving yourself more time? You're giving yourself more time if you put yourself up to 28 and reduce the damage, and not reduce the damage, or if you Sunkeeper.
So if you just Forbidden Healing outright, you're going to take 14, at least 15 damage outright. Right.
I think I like Sunkeepering and then Forbidden Healing, and then the following turn, there are a bunch of 3/3s, so you have got Wild Pyromancer plus Consecrate.
So if you Sunkeeper Tarim and then Forbidden Healing, you're actually going to keep yourself at a HP total that would be higher, I think. He is going to, you're not even going to Forbidden Healing, just actually going to straight up just build a board of Sunkeeper Tarims.
Save the Forbidden Healing.
What can Gadgetzan draw Duncan here? How close is he with Gadgetzan? Is there anything left in his deck?
I got the best deals.
Is there
So
2 saps have been used.
there's probably an Edwin,
Yes.
unless he's replaced Edwin with the Questing Adventurers.
There's Edwin.
There is Edwin. So now you can put something else big on the board after this turn. And the Slayer as well.
He doesn't have enough mana. Oh, there's the coin. Is that close enough? I think he actually needs 1 more mana for this to be lethal. Because he'd need 1 more mana for the Razor Petal, because then he could use his face and Vile Spine, and he'd manage to jam 9 damage to face this turn. So he's very close, but he's already used 1 counterfeit coin, so he's not going to find it through Gadgetzan here. Might be better to just search and make a very big Edwin.
I'm almost out of cards.
He's counting it.
It's close, but it's no cigar. But it will put him on a very low HP total.
One off lethal. So close for Duncan. Now Forbidden Healing can put him back up to 21. So Forbidden Healing, or he could go for Consecration plus Forbidden Healing, and then could trade in his minions.
So yeah, you could Consecrate, which gets rid of Tyrion.
Doesn't quite.
No, gets rid of his shield. And
Gets
then
rid of his shield, gets rid of the Arcane Giant, but leaves both the Auctioneer, the Slayer, and Tyrion on the board. Then Forbidden Healing plus trading in your... You'd have to trade in first with your dude, your Silverhand Recruit.
But if you don't do that, and then... Yeah, you're going to... I think if you trade with your Silverhand Recruit in first...
Interesting, he just values getting all of that. Heals, can follow up next turn with Consecration, it does mean.
And you can trade
if
in...
he wants to, but you trade in both.
Yeah, this allows him to deal with the Auctioneer as well. And actually, if he can top deck an Equality at some point in the next few turns, he might find himself back on track.
How many cards are left for
Oh, he doesn't... Oh, right.
Duncan?
He's,
yeah, this is what I was thinking.
Yeah, thinking he's not
Well, I
enough.
think I know now. There's going to be 0 left.
I know now. There's no cards left.
Okay, so Duncan just builds what he can of a board. The Sherazin finally comes through, but if that Sherazin dies, then he's not going to be able to revive it.
I mean, what you kind of have to play it anyway, right?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
never going to revive it regardless. So you play it. You play Questing. Do you play Questing, then play it, then play Razor Petal, then play Edwin, and just say you don't have Equality, I win?
I don't think you play it. And this is what... I don't think you need to play everything here.
No, I suppose you want to have something to follow up from an Equality.
Okay, he disagrees.
No, I mean, there's options for both. I mean, you had lethal regardless. This way, Equality just makes it harder. I mean, I think he's dead anyway.
Yeah, Pyromancer plus Consecration. I guess that's what Duncan's saying, is he's saying that Consecrations aren't going to deal with me and allow you to win the game. And somehow, Duncan has pulled that one out of the bag, to be honest, because he was looking in a troublesome spot, and then he was able to build up a big enough board with those Arcane Giants, and despite the answers coming through from Dan, he was able to just get out of range, and Dan didn't find that Equality. Equality could have really changed that game.
Yeah, I think he'd been searching for it for the last 7 turns almost. I mean, that would have the game completely. But like he said, he took pressure, didn't everything board, played around Equality, playing the Equality. Meant that, you know, even should that have come through, the board clears that came through, he always had something to follow up on. Really liked the way that Dan played, the way that Duncan played.
And I liked at the end, I was saying maybe you shouldn't commit because of a possible Equality. He knows that Equality hasn't been there the whole game, otherwise it would have been played. What he's read from that hand is saying there could be a possible Consecration here. Combine that with a Pyromancer, and that would deal with my board, and I wouldn't have lethal. So he played out and put as much as he could and played around that.
The two thought paths that he potentially had was, I commit everything and I lose to Equality, or I don't commit everything and I maybe lose to a lesser board clear, and then he somehow regains things, or regains a board state with some taunts, or regains a board state with Ivory Knight or something, and then I'm suddenly behind and don't have the fuel to beat him because I'm now on fatigue. So I think actually he played to the win condition that was maybe more likely. You know, he hadn't seen the Equality all game. The Equality definitely would have come out, and he would have had to have top decked it. So he's basically saying, you either top deck Equality or I win. regardless of on the side of other, I don't want to get punished by just a Consecrate Pyromancer, for instance.
So Duncan will go 1-0 up. That means Dan still has every one of his classes to play with, but Duncan just has Hunter and Warrior left now. So important he was able to get that rogue victory out early. Now he can just toy around a little bit. I think maybe just bring a Hunter into this one. But I guess it's the story old question of what do you bring in Conquest?
Well, you know it's a super, well, again, like I think Sottle always taught me, you can queue whatever the hell you like in Conquest because you've got to win with everything. So he takes the Taunt Warrior here. Again, against a very slow Paladin. And we saw earlier, I think Ben, no, it was Ting Ting had success with the slow Paladin versus the Taunt Warrior. Or Ben had the success. I'm getting confused because everyone's brought similar things. I think Ben had the success with the Paladin against the Taunt Warrior here. Actually going to keep on to his Curator, Dan, holding on to that. Probably an important card in this matchup.
It's a very clunky hand, but how worried is he about getting an early start? Clearly, he's not very worried.
He's not a Paladin that has an early start, though, is he? So he doesn't run the Murlocs, no Gentle Megasaur. You know that realistically, you're probably going to win this further down the line. And that's why he's chosen to keep things that have got harder hitting late game.
That's one of his early start minions. The Doomsayer, which will easily deal with the Armor Smith unless some crazy decision Duncan decides to execute it, but I very much doubt that.
Yeah, I mean, Duncan won't be too stressed here. The only thing Duncan will be stressed about is the fact he's got no taunts in hand. So, you know, people realistically saying control matchups, the quicker that you can get Sulfuras out, the quicker you can start winning. And doesn't look like Duncan is going to be racing towards that goal because there's just not anything that he can even get him over the starting line at this point.
Yeah, a taunt for this Duncan would be good, but I mean, Ravaging Ghoul is something you can put on the board if you wanted to just deal with this 1-1. But again, we see Ravaging Ghouls being used so often in conjunction with Sleep with the Fishes that a lot of Quest Warriors are just keeping them for that combo. And not even hitting into the Silverhand recruit here. Doesn't feel it's necessary to waste his Fiery War Axe charge. Dan's still not able to put any real threat on the board either. So it's a bit of a waiting game at the moment.
Duncan looks unfazed. Unfazed completely by the fact that he has no taunts at turn 5. But again, like you said, this is two very slow decks that realistically, you know, are going to be waiting to the later game. Duncan just probably would have liked to have tried to accelerate those taunts out so that he could start putting pressure on Dan, but it's not going to be the end of the world that he can't get it done as early as he would have liked to.
Could coin out the Steed here if he wanted to. Duncan might regret leaving that 1-1 on the board. Now suddenly it's a 3-7 that he's got to deal with. One of these executes might come in handy, but is it something you really want to execute?
Well, you're just going to generate a 2-6, right? So you're executing a 3-7 to generate a 2-6. But Duncan again's hand is awful. Really, really not in a good state. Can't really play Armor Smith because it just dies directly to the True Silver unless you want to eat up a True Silver charge. Looks like he is going to execute it.
No other options.
I guess you're right, though. There really wasn't anything left for Duncan. But what he can do by trading in with the Fiery War Axe is put this on a 2-turn timer for the killing of this Steed, which means he'll be able to deal with it with his Fiery War Axe next turn. But it's kind of a desperate play. You don't really want to be doing that. There is the equality. Dan finally picks up.
Yeah, so it does exist. Something he'll probably be muttering to himself as well. Well, so now you show up to the party. And if you are just joining us and you're thinking, wow, on earth are all the Murlocs in this Murloc Paladin? Not really a Murloc Paladin. It's a very mid-range to late game, even possibly could be said is just control Paladin, to be honest. I think it still runs the Hydrologist that we saw, but no early game Murloc package for Dan.
I think it's just a control Paladin.
And he hasn't needed it in this game so far, really.
No, I mean, it hasn't needed much. There has been nothing from Duncan. And Duncan still yet to find out. Oh, it's even worse than Ness. Duncan is now turned 7 without a taunt.
Fortunately, he's not in a matchup where he is in a taunt race, like we saw Ness in earlier.
It kind of
but
is.
Well, it's still a race,
yeah.
but it's just not a taunt race.
No, absolutely not. But it's still kind of a race to get your quest completed. You want to get it completed as early as possible, really. Because, you know, you just leave the Paladin to do what he likes. It's going to be Tyrion. It's going to be Curator. Going to be whatever else that, you know, they can throw down as it gets towards the later stages of the game.
Still not seen any other death rattles in Dan's deck, apart from Tyrion. I wonder if there is something like Ken. Because that Enzoth could be huge in this matchup. Yes, okay, he gets Sulfurous and starts hitting for 8, but then you just play Enzoth and summon a couple to a few minions and widen up that board. And hope that it hits a Divine Shield of Tyrion, for example.
I think Duncan just considering whether just to play Acolyte of Pain to at least get one draw from it, but really holding back here. Happy to be greedy in this matchup. Curator will come down and it's going to start giving Dan plenty of options. Murloc there brings up the Primordial Dracotail. Actually only running one Stampeding Kodo in his deck, but that will deal with at least something from the Warrior. And there's the first taunt that comes down. Finally, Dan gets a taunt on the board and there is another one in hand too. Duncan gets a taunt on the board. They both begin with a D, dude. It's really difficult.
And I'm called Dan as well, so
Everything's called
everything's just confusing you. Very large hand for Dan here. Plenty of options. So could just outright trade both, play Tyrion here. Could outdoor Peacekeeper first and then trade both. Keeps your Curator alive. Followed up maybe by a Hydrologist, look for a secret. Perhaps something like maybe like a Kodo. I mean, oh, that's a good play as well. Using the Peacekeeper to in conjunction with the Kodo. I like that. Makes a threatening board. And Duncan might be able to play a second if he wants. A second Primordial Drake.
I think he potentially is considering a sleep with the fishes as well as the Ravager just to generate some more draw here. Doesn't really deal with the entire board. Will definitely deal with some of it and obviously gets you that extra draw from the Acolyte.
There's a Brawl. That Brawl could come in handy later with
Enzoth
coming into play, but again, it could be an Enzoth that only summons one minion, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. It could just literally be a Tyrion resummoning machine.
Which, to be honest, I mean, 10 mana for a 5/7 plus a 6/6 with Divine Shield isn't awful.
It's worth it. That's worth.
I've not...
especially such a high-value minion like Tyrion.
I mean, and potentially, with Stonehill Defenders in the deck, that could be a 10 mana summon a 5/7 plus 3 Tyrions, depending on what you get from the Defender.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if he just runs one more Death Rattle, it's probably worth it.
Will it come into play is the real question. At the moment, Duncan really struggling with his quest. Just the one taunt played so far. Dan can just refuel and play another True Silver Champion and continue to put pressure into Duncan. Beg some answers. The Primordial Drake is a pretty good answer if he wanted to play it. Instead, he's more concerned about finding these taunts.
Just get more taunts down. These options. Ancient of Blossoms isn't too bad. I think that's the best value minion that you can pick up. And Dan just concerned now with increasing his taunt count as much as possible. There's Ragnaros the Light Lord. This is definitely a control iteration. No mid-range here. Straight up late game for Dan.
Do you Equality consecrate this?
I don't think you have to, do you? You could use your True Silver.
Okay, he just wants... you can use Getaway Coda with Tyrion. This will certainly help out Enzoth.
Absolutely.
I said it could have been 3. He didn't find it off the Stonehill Defender, but just killing this now for Duncan will allow him to play another Tyrion. Does mean if Tyrion dies, his True Silver Champion just goes to waste. But I suppose you're not too concerned if you're going to get another Tyrion anyway.
I guess the only thing that would feels bad is if he has some sort of weapon removal.
Yep. Gluttonous Ooze, of course, that has seen a lot of play throughout several decks. Would be a bit of a punish. Not sure if it is in Duncan's deck, of course.
Made to fit.
I think it's just going to be Duncan not actually even bothering. Maybe playing around Repentance with the Armor Smith, but also just generating a bit more armor. But I'm going to say, I think he's trying to force Dan to trade the Tyrion away before Duncan has to trade into the Tyrion himself. But you can imagine Dan is going to hold on to this potential of getting a getaway Kodo Tyrion, especially with that Enzoth in deck, as much as physically possible. Could even just then play Ragnaros the Light Lord as well.
Let me think.
Just going to go for the 1 consecration. Still saving on to that equality for a bigger turn. He's not worried about putting direct damage to face at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not his game plan. It isn't to win right here, right now. He's more than happy to take this a little bit further because of the amount of value he has in his hand.
Also, it's very clear that he is trying to get this getaway Kodo to get value out. And Duncan obviously has a decision to make whether he wants to trade in. Don't think he will. I think he'll keep hold of this Fiery War Axe and force Dan to try and trade this Tyrion because it looks like a good trade for him, but obviously Dan desperately wanting to keep hold.
You could play Hydrologist now and look for a redemption as well.
You could. Yeah, you could.
And then...
He's going to go... He really, really wants to keep this Tyrion alive. I guess because he's got Wild Pyromancer, he's happy to just hold on to the equality. You can see Duncan there saying, well, he is definitely trying to force me to trade into this Tyrion.
Well, man, it means he got to use his True Silver as well, right?
Yeah. But also you've got to remember that this is 6 damage that's getting jammed into face every single time.
Dirty pulls the Drake. It's not the worst.
You could execute the Drake, right? Getaway Kodo the Drake. I mean,
but then you have to take 4 damage to do so.
I mean, better than taking 6 damage.
So if Tyrion does lose, he will return to the hand.
It's probably one of the worst options, actually. In fact, probably is the worst option out of the 3 there for the brawl. It should be Dan taking the game. I don't see any way that Duncan can get his way back in here. I think it's just too far gone. That's a Devil Saw Egg. Okay, there we go. A little bit more Death Rattle coming through for this Danswf Paladin.
I wonder whether he's got Defender of Argus as well in this deck, or potentially, I mean, Devil Saw Egg is fantastic if you're then going to play Pyromancer into equality at some point. You just kill everything and then you summon a 5/5, but the concede does come out from Duncan and Dan ties it up with his Control Paladin. A really tasty deck. When you see it in action like that, the deck does look great, just making short work of the Taunt Warrior, but the Taunt Warrior didn't really have many taunts, I guess.
I mean, look, the worst thing in the world is a Taunt Warrior, and that was even worse than Ness. Went to taunt turn 7 before even having a taunt to play. So ideally, you want to be curving out early. You want to get Stonehill Defender. You want to get your 4-drop taunts. You want to get into Ali Armorsmith, get towards Honorary Direhorn. You just want to curve out with taunts, and then eventually by turn 8, turn 9, you're starting to play Sulfurous. You're starting to win the game and accelerate from there. If you haven't even started that chain, by the time you get to turn 7 versus a control-heavy Paladin, you're not in a great position.
And the more I think about it, the more I see that Control Paladin, the more I love it. Because the more I was thinking of Danswf, and I was thinking, yeah, okay, what, you're going to summon 1? Yeah, okay, it's alright. But then your Stonehill Defenders can potentially get you another Tyrion. Getaway Kodos can get you another Tyrion. Redemption could get you another Tyrion. Plus, then we just saw the Devil Saw Egg, which works fantastically in conjunction with Pyromancer and Equality to build a board as well. It's something I want to play. I think, genuinely, I'll probably get home and I'm going to test that out tonight.
Devil Saw Egg and Spike Rid Steed.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Because you then, Death Rattle generates you a 5/5 and a 2/6. It's probably why it's there. It becomes a big Spike Ridge Siege target, but it is kind of an investment. I don't think he'd likely be running Defender of Argus. He's probably not running Blessing of Kings, so it's kind of like a play on turn 3 because he doesn't actually have that many other turn 3s, and you've got the Doomsayer to activate it if you ever want to try and slow down the pace of the game and give you tempo back because you're immediately generating a 5/5. And if you can invest it on the board early on, then when it gets to the late game, use it as a Spike Ridge Steed target. I think it's a pretty solid inclusion.
And I genuinely think that we could be watching a possible matchup for the grand final. Both these players are more than capable of getting there after the winners bracket, and it's a shame that they've had to match up so early. Dan really taking the initiative by playing that Danswf Paladin because no one was really playing it. Then it was seen taking DreamHack, and of course the guy won it. So that means Dan has said, okay, this guy's won a tournament with it. I'm going to try it out for, what, a day? And then I'm going to bring it as my tournament deck. So credit to that man for really taking a little bit of a risk, but it seems like it was a risk that has paid off, getting him a victory in the end. If he had lost 3 times with it, then perhaps he would have felt a little bit bad. But instead, he ties it up. It's 1-1. And it's going to be Quest Warrior versus Quest Warrior.
Again, feels like a taunt race in this particular circumstance, and Dan has got some early taunts. But Duncan does this time as well. Dirty Rat on 2, here we go.
Dirty Rat on 2 just has so much value in this matchup. I mentioned it earlier because it's not playing into the quest. Of course, everyone knows that by now. If you are new and you're watching this for the first time, they're trying to get their 7 taunts. And because the Dirty Rat pulled the taunt from the hand rather than it being played, it doesn't.
Would have been worse if it pulled the Stonehill Defender, however. So actually, I think might have been the best target to actually pull here for Dan. Because it's a 4-drop that he got for free. Yes, he's sad that he obviously can't play that, but with Stonehill Defender giving him another 4-drop and obviously having Tar Creeper in hand, it's not put him too far off kilter.
Yep, definitely was one of the better options. On the other side for Duncan, he has a Stonehill Defender available as well, so he can start spawning taunts. Looking for that value. And I think that's the play here. You don't play it. I don't really think you play anything else. I suppose there might be a merit for playing a War Axe and dealing with some of these minions, perhaps. But honestly, I just like Stonehill Defender as well.
I like just slamming
And to be fair, that's what this matchup becomes. Oh, I'm going to play a taunt. Oh, I'm going to play another taunt.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I might play a taunt. Hey, let's discover a taunt.
And let's play that Discover Taunt.
Because it's called Taunt Warrior.
Actually, none of these options are great right now. Duncan, ideally, I think, would have liked a 4-drop or a 5-drop to continue this curve to make sure he has something to play. Cornered Sentry might work if he picks up something like a Whirlwind or a Ravaging Ghoul, but Primordial Drake just seems the most useful in this situation. And we'll pick it up here. But again, he's now got a couple of turns where he's going to have to rely on top decks to provide the taunts for him, where Dan has got 2 playable taunts in hand still already.
So the winner of this matchup will go through to the semi-final. Loser will drop to the losers bracket. We've already seen Ben and Ting Ting play both of their round 1 games where they both won, and then we saw the semi-final between Ben and Ting Ting, where Ben won to move on to the winners bracket final, where he will be waiting to compete against someone in the live finals later on this month.
So it looks like Duncan quite obviously setting up here for a sleep with the fishes. Will that temper Dan into playing anything different here? What can Duncan do? The best he can do likely is a Fiery War Axe and Sleep with the Fishes. Sleep with the Fishes will deal immediately with the 5-4 and the 1-4 once they make their respective trades, if they make their respective trades, but obviously that's likely for Duncan to make them regardless. And it will leave 1 Bloodhoof Brave up, because I don't think the damage will be there for Duncan unless he picks up a Whirlwind and can coin it out. So still deals with the...
Could use his War Axe, right?
Yes, sorry, there's 3 damage. So yeah, they'll deal everything. They'll deal with everything really nicely.
But you're not playing a taunt, I guess.
Deals with everything really nicely, but you're not playing a taunt. The problem with playing Ali Armorsmith here is it just dies.
I think Fiery War Axe into Sleep with the Fishes seems like a very strong play.
Yeah, I thought for some reason it did 2 damage to the Fishes, but I realized it does 3. So yeah, Fiery War Axe and Sleep with the Fishes will clean up this entire board. Seems too good to sort of pass over here for Duncan.
Well,
yes.
what are your alternatives? Coin out the Armorsmith. It just dies. You might generate a little bit of armor, but it also allows Dan to build up a bigger board. I mean, potentially he might be clearing it up, and he might deal enough damage that the Sleep with the Vicious might get more value if you drew a Whirlwind next turn, for example. But
yeah, the only thought process behind playing Ali Armorsmith is maybe I can get more value from Sleep with the Fishes. He's actually going to Sleep with the Fishes first.
Okay, so he's not worried about taking down Bloodhoof Brave at the moment.
No.
He's happy for him to be alive. Interesting, though.
Yeah, I think I would have maybe lent towards Fiery War Axe because it just deals with the entire board. But I kind of understand maybe wanting to hold on to the War Axe for one reason or another. In my mind, I'm trying to work out what that one reason or another is, but I'm sure it's there.
There's clearly something. I mean, I won't argue with Duncan's line of play because Duncan has showed why he is one of the best players in this competition, to be honest. He's really taken this tournament by storm. And there will be a thought process in his mind. He will be thinking, I want this Fiery War Axe for this reason. Whilst, yes,
he doesn't have any execute activators right now, I suppose.
Yeah.
So he might want to save it for an execute activator going towards the later turns.
I mean, in theory, he could keep it equipped, the second attack. But then I suppose you are playing into something like Gluttonous Ooze. Although it's not been an inclusion that has been extremely popular in the Quest Warrior list. But it has showed up here and there.
So actually Dan holds on to his Fiery War Axe charge here, and that will now allow him to clean up this Ali Armorsmith, should he choose. Also has options to play more taunts, also has options to play Acolyte of Pain, but we are getting desperately low on cards now for Dan if he does choose to play 2 of them. That'll leave him with 2 in hand. Compared to Duncan, who seemingly has a little more in terms of options, coming from hand at this point in time, but playing a taunt now will pull down ahead in that Taunt Warrior race by 1.
Awkward turn after awkward turn for both of these, really. An option for Dan where he could run his Fiery War Axe into the LA Armor Smith, followed by the Tar Creeper, and then he could play Sleep with the Fishes if he would like. Clears the board and keeps him with a 5-2 and some taunts as well. But instead he is just going to use the Bloodhoof Brave to trade in and leave this LA Armor Smith alive for now. And play another taunt. Put himself at 4 out of 7. 4 out of 7. Went a bit London then.
4 out of 7,
4
mate.
out of 7. All right, mate. You want to play a Taunt Warrior, do you, mate?
You sound like Gross Gore.
Like who? I have no idea who that is.
You don't know who Grossy Gore? Oh, I'm not even going to explain.
I don't know.
It's not worth it.
Is that my age? I'm not the same age as you.
No, no.
Okay, never mind. Tell me later.
It's more of a League of Legends thing.
Well, that explains a lot. Had to bring it up at some point, didn't you?
Or RuneScape, I suppose.
Okay, well that's slightly more relevant to a lot of people's childhoods. These 1-5s aren't going to help clearing this board, really. But you could play Stonehill Defender, search for something else. That LA Armor Smith's, the Armor Smith, sorry, not the LA Armor Smith. The Armor Smith is still on board after playing it earlier rather than using the weapon. So it has been able to generate a little bit of armor.
Oh, Tarlord. Nice. Infested Tauren is nice. If he plays Infested Tauren, he can actually get his quest completed next turn.
Same could be said for Public Defender, I guess, but do you really want to put a 0-7 taunt on the board?
Well, Public Defender will allow him to play Sleep with the Fishes this turn if he really wants to. Don't think you need to, though. I just like this because now you guarantee yourself the completion next turn if you want to.
That's the Sleep with the Fishes.
I guess you don't want him to... I don't know. I suppose because you've played Stonehill Defender, you don't want him getting more than...
You just want a board. You want more of a board than your opposition. But as I said, they're just awkward turns where they're forced into making decisions and using these Sleep with the Fishes. And I guess they're thinking, well, Dan's thinking, well, when else am I going to use the Sleep with the Fishes? I might not even get a possibility of a Ravaging Ghoul or a Whirlwind.
What was his central option there for the Stonehill Defender?
The Tar Lord.
I think if I went for that line of play, I might have just taken the Tar Lord. Because I'm not going to play my Infested Tauren and my Primordial Drake next turn, so...
I guess Infested Tauren...
a bit more proactive.
Yeah, it can provide a little bit more of a board presence across a couple of turns. 6 out of 7. He's nearly there.
They're just really awkward turns, though, aren't they, Dan?
But look at the hand for Duncan. Look at the size difference between Duncan and Dan. Just hand-wise.
It's huge. What?
You're right?
Didn't press the
He's
button.
dying. Slightly dying.
What this does now allow Dan to do next turn is play Infested Tauren, Sulfurous, and use the hero power. Which could be huge if it hits the Primordial Drake.
I think you're the only caster I've known to cough and then hit the cough button.
Yeah, no,
I'm impressed.
And then not cough afterwards.
I like it. I think it was good. It was unique.
It was a surprise cough, Dan. Sometimes you can't help the surprise cough, you know.
It does, but you still panicked and went for the cough button as well, so I'm proud of you.
Thanks, bud.
Quest completed. Doesn't hit the Drake, though. If that had hit the Drake, then would have allowed him to go face.
Absolutely.
In a lot more control.
And now Duncan is unfortunately in the position where he kind of has to start spamming minions on board in order to start soaking some of these. Another Primordial Drake comes down. This could be completely cleaned up with that Ragnar's hero power, however.
Oh, there's a brawl that could come in handy a little bit later. Not sure it's necessary now.
You would hit then shield block first.
Yep.
So hit first, then shield block, see what you draw. And I guess if you're not running shield slam, does it matter?
Yeah,
actually?
I mean, it's habit now because it used to always be Armor first with the shield slam. There are some decks that are running shield slam.
There are, yes.
In this, but judging by that line of play, it would heavily suggest that Dan isn't. It's also a factor that might just tilt your opponent because they'll be like, oh my god, why did you armor up first? What about shield slam? That's what most of Twitch chat will be raging about.
Why not?
Oh my god,
first?
order.
Order, guys, order. There we go, Fire Plume's Heart now completed. Duncan has caught up. Nothing majorly gained for Dan for completing first. Actually, you'd say, given the hands Duncan seems like he's in a good position here.
Well, this is the thing. Dan completed the quest first, and a lot of people say, oh, if you complete the quest first, you're probably going to win. But the fact that he hasn't had as much to work with from hand is why Duncan is still very much in this as well.
Yeah, but I think that Dan completed the quest really awkwardly at the end, especially those last 3 taunt minions. They kind of, it all phased up that he was actually doing more damage to his board than sort of preserving it. And Duncan didn't really feel threatened enough to have to use all of his answers. And you can see Duncan's hand is huge. He's even kept the coin. I mean, at what point are you going to end up using the coin here?
Do you just die insect now, see if it hits first?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the result you wanted. Play Curator. And if Duncan ends up missing with his die insect, suddenly you're feeling happy.
You keep your weapon as well, yep, just in case you have to deal with it and just to clean up anything.
But yeah, there's no point going face unless you're looking for a 2-turn lethal with your die insect. But then you can do that over the next 2 turns anyway, regardless, as long as there's no taunt on board.
So do you Drake execute here and then just
you don't even
die
need to
insect
execute.
face? Oh yeah, you can use your weapon.
Good use your weapon. You could try and preserve life total by Ravaging Ghoul or Whirlwind and executing, but I think Drake hit die insect, or you go wide with the Ravaging Ghoul and you try and play Dirty Rat. But Dirty Rat is less valuable now the quest has already been completed, because it could just pull something important.
That's true. The Dirty Rat, you'll get the value from a brawl, right?
Yeah, sure. You get the value from a brawl, but this is not a huge brawl board, right?
It isn't, but it might be a game-winning brawl. If the Dirty Rat can survive,
absolutely,
it's something that can swing this game heavily in your favor.
The other option is to execute and die insect and hope you hit. So now you've got a pretty beefy board, low value minions that his die insect isn't going to be super impactful against.
Instead, he's just going to look like he whirlwinded afterwards to deal with the Curator. So we'll put himself down to 16, but he has the board now, Duncan.
Does he, Duncan? He has the board now.
Yeah, I'm going back to my roots. But Ravaging Ghoul plus Sleep with the Fishes here.
Yeah, Ravaging Ghoul, the thing is you want to weave in the hero power, because he's at 16 life. So if you put him down to 8, that puts a massive, massive piece of pressure onto Duncan. So the best case scenario for you somehow is dealing with the board and weaving a hero power in to go face directly.
So you just Ravaging Ghoul Sleep with the Fishes. And then you hero power.
Yes. That's exactly what you were saying.
That puts him down to 8. It was pretty much what I was saying. You could even Dirty Rat first. No, you couldn't. I was thinking you could Dirty Rat first, and then you could use the execute, but then you can't weave in the hero power.
Depending what you pull, like you could pull a low value minion, and then suddenly you get even more value for Sleep with the Fishes, but you take a huge risk doing that. I do like your play. I think getting a hero power to face here is incredibly important, because it puts it on a timer of, you know, 1 more hero power to face and you lose. And then we don't know if Duncan's running any health gain or armor gain. And you see execute in hand, you've got brawl, and you have the weapon retained if the taunt comes down. It's game.
Yep. That's going to be that. Dan can afford to do anything he wants here and win the game. And he did complete the quest first, so clearly complete quest first is good. Duncan, despite having so much in his hand, he just couldn't keep up with the pressure from Dan. And that's going to be a 2-1 lead. Dan, after going 1-0 down, is right back into this and just 1 game away from moving on to the semi-final of this bracket. It was a close one. It came down to playing taunt minions. Who would have thought it?
And it came down to using your Ragnar's hero power.
Yeah, die insect. It's funny because, and this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but they removed Ragnaros, and everyone was like, yeah, great, okay, because Ragnaros, it was a lot of 50-50 coin flips. I'm glad that games aren't going to end. And then now we have die insect anyway, so it just comes back down to it.
I'm just salting you like salt.
Yeah, I'm a little bit salty. Just like how much I hate Knife Juggler as well. But, you know, you have to deal with it.
You are the UK's Reynad.
I don't know if I would go that far, because A, I'm not as good as him. And
You're
B,
not as good looking as
I'm
either.
better. No, I won't. Damn it, I was going to... Okay, whatever.
I'm joking.
Okay, so game number 4.
You're a beautiful man.
We're right into the... Thank you. I'm going to do my hair as well. Whilst you say that, make me feel better. Game number 4 is going to get underway. As I said, Dan has the possibility to move through to the semi-finals. And he has a Dragonid Operative, so that is going to be Dragon Priest for him. He has really been watching DreamHack this weekend, not going to lie. He's just said, okay, what decks have done well in tournament play? These ones. He's tested them out, and why not?
I think that's, you know,
It's a good approach.
Acceptable strategy.
Very acceptable strategy. Side for Duncan now. Hey, there's a defender of Argus.
Holy. Let's see what. Go on. I think everybody wants you to pick Nozdormu, Dan. So I think you should do it.
You talking to me, or you talking to?
Just talking
I was going to say, 'cause I'm not playing, but.
I'm talking to Dan.
Which Dan?
Dan.
God damn it.
The only Dan that matters, the player.
Right in the fields.
No, I call you Gask.
Yeah?
Dan Gask.
Thanks, mate.
Remember my rap? Call you Dan Gask.
So Acolyte of Pain will come down just facing off against the Nether Spite Historian, so he thinks he's going to get some value.
I know you want to forget that, but it's fine.
I really need the toilet.
Do you want to just do it while you go? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I've done that before.
If it becomes desperate, I'll let you guys know at home. But at the moment, I'm alright. I'm powering through. If the players can power through, I can power through.
You can see Duncan's desperate for the toilet as well. He must be in the same position as you. I won't make any, like, water jokes or anything like that. Don't worry. Oh. So, free card draw coming up for Duncan, because the Acolyte's got some juicy targets to hit into. Now he's deciding what to take from the Stonehill. Ornery Dinehorn, Dinehorn Hatchling, or Dirty Rat. I think Dirty Rat's a pretty good choice against Dragon Priest, because if you can pull something like a Dragon Operative, take away some of the value of that card. It's just a risk, though, isn't it? It's just a risk because you could pull something that's good. But you can see in the hand that Dan's got, I mean, Dirty Rat would have got work done, because there is 2 Defender of Argus, a Bookworm, and a Dragon Operative, and at least every single one of them has a battle cry of some sort. So Dirty Rat would have at least ruined one of those minions' days.
Here comes a whirlwind into a Sleep with the Fish's turn.
Oh, it's great value for the Acolyte as well.
So much value. Dan was starting to pick up a little bit of speed with his Dragon Priest, but he's going to be halted immediately. Good for him. Means he can just play an Operative or Elise here onto this turn and just have a nice 5-5 or a 5-6 on the board. Who would you play? Do you prefer Elise here just because then Bookworm still gets his value if you want to use that next turn?
Yeah, I mean, are you desperate for a card from your opponent's deck?
I think the Bookworm's more valuable because we know how many 3 and below taunt minions there are in this Quest Warrior.
And it's going to get some value regardless of if he plays Bloodhoof or Direhorn Hatchling here. Good choice by Dan to hold on to the Bookworm.
Really good choice. And it was what we spoke about. If we rewind right back to the start of this broadcast when we were discussing Priest and we were saying why we think Priest is good, for this reason, the fact that they can deal with 3 or less minions so successfully. He had a choice, Shadow Word Pain or Bookworm there. And now he can continue with the pressure onto the face of Duncan. And Duncan needs to find his way back into the board again. The Sleep with the Fish has allowed him to crawl back into it a little bit.
Shadow of Pain is going to ruin his day as well because he's got Dragon and Operative as well. He would like to draw a Dragon to get that value there. But again, there's always the option of just saying, okay, slam it and play it as a 5-6. Could Lyra...
just Lyra and then Shadow Word Pain,
You could just Lyra and Shadow Word Pain. Are you planning on popping off with one of your other elementals, or...?
I like it because you're going to get an extra spell guaranteed. You're also begging the question from Duncan to answer it. Might even waste an execute on it.
Absolutely. I like Lyra. I like it more than Dragon. I would like Keep to get the value off Dragon and Operative. I like Lyra and Shadow Word Pain here. It will get you something. Whether that's something that will be useful or not remains to be seen, but it is a card that warrants a response.
Well, there's another Shadow Word Pain. I'd take the Shadow Word Pain every day of the week, just because, for the reason we've been talking about, the amount of taunt minions that are 3 attack or less.
Every single one of those is particularly useful. Like
Potion of Madness again, Potion of Madness can help. But I think the value from Shadow Word Pain is far too great. But I guess alongside it now, well, he can't really do anything. He could, if he wanted to, he could hit in something, then heal it back up. No, that's not going to work either. Northshire Cleric's not going to get any value here, so instead, he's going to keep his board a little bit tight, not spread it out too much, and play around Brawl.
Option for Dirty Rat and Brawl this turn. Could actually get something really useful off for Duncan. Obviously has the option of the Curator, but he's not exactly lacking cards right now. What he is lacking... Well, he's got a turn 8. He's already got Primordial Drake guaranteed here, so... Usually Curator's really good because it guarantees you that turn 8 of Primordial Drake. But he's already got that, so I like Dirty Rat and see what you pull, and yeah, definitely think about Brawl now that Lyra's come down.
But if Lyra wins this Brawl... Well, I guess there's nothing for Dan to play. Instead, it is just going to be the Bookworm.
It's not a bad result.
Still no Dragon, though. So whilst the Bookworm did get insane value earlier on, Draconoid Operative is still sat there doing nothing. May have to just be played as a 5/6 here if Dan wants to keep up the pressure.
The problem is spot removal will absolutely ruin your day, so you really probably want to get value out. I guess Dan could consider Northshire Cleric and then Defender of Argus, which I think is where he's going. Not even think, he is.
Yep. You still put a little bit of pressure. You're not having to waste that Operative. He really wants to see a Dragon coming out. Now, Duncan, the task on hand is trying to remove this board, but also you're still trying to complete that quest.
The 4-attack minion, I think, is good here because it means it can't be removed immediately by the Priest. It doesn't get exactly do anything directly, and also will give the Priest the ability to draw more, especially with double Northshire Cleric. I think that's huge. Slam a Northshire Cleric down, heal one of
and
minions.
Then you've got 2 draws to try and find a Dragon to get some value out of this Operative if you'd like.
Exactly.
Maybe overcommitting to the board by doing so.
Now you're going to trade your 2/2 and your 2/1 in anyway. Likely. Still, that's a lot of Shadow Word Pains here. Still no Dragon.
You still play Priest, I think.
And you've seen one Brawl, right? So.
Yep, you keep the threats alive. There's another Execute though. That's double Execute available.
I think it's looking good for Duncan to stabilize here.
So you could Execute, then Fiery War Axe, then Execute. That seems like a waste. You could just use 1 Fiery War Axe if necessary.
I think Curator and Fiery War Axe seems fine. Like, you know that the Priest has not got a huge amount of direct damage. But I guess this way you are limiting draws, so I think that's fine as well. The only thing I guess you would be worried about is a potential Inner Fire and Divine Spirit combo, but we haven't seen too many Dragon Priests
There's
run
a Dragon. There's some direct damage if he wants it. Fiery War Axe.
I think that's the only choice that you have.
Shadow Word Pain, and then you put 6 damage into the face of Duncan. You continue. This is getting awfully close now. Duncan really needs to find something to help out. Otherwise, Dan is going to be moving on to the semi-finals.
So Duncan could play Bloodhoof. He definitely thinks, I think he needs to execute this Draconoid Operative. The only thing he can use to proc execute is his face. So I think the only out that Duncan has here is playing Curator and then executing with his face, which leaves him at 2 HP. Because I think every other play results in him losing.
If he puts Dirty Rat down and brings the Drake on, does that mean that the Drake allows for lethal? Has completed the quest.
That's true, the quest has been completed.
So I suppose an option is you Sulfurus. I hope you hit the Operative, but then you're still...
Shadow Word Pain still kills you,
Shadow Word Pain still kills you. But he's already seen 2 Shadow Word Pains.
I think by not executing now, and now not having the mana to play... Now not having the mana to play the Curator and execute.
Yeah, he's running out of time.
Yeah, he's over. He's done.
Puts himself on 5, and that Shadow Word Pain that has been just sat there awaiting to get the value is going to be enough to win the series for Dan. The concede comes out from Duncan, and Dan moves on to the semi-final. An incredible performance, a great choice of decks from him, as I said, taking inspiration from recent